Aloha and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to discuss the filming locations that were used in episode number 10. The title is Lest We Forget, and it aired on February 12th, 1981. So without further delay, let's get started. Okay, so here's an overview of the island with this episode's various filming locations on it. In this opening scene, it was a night shoot that they filmed at the Bellows Field Beach Park. And I'm going to drop down there now. And unfortunately, there just aren't any street view options on this portion of the beach. However, if you look behind this couple here, you can just make out this jetty behind them. And that's the jetty right there behind them, and we see them run out of the ocean, and they run along the beach, and they sit down on a beach towel about right here, and they sit down. This is Bobby, and this is Diane. Bobby, he's a sailor on the USS Arizona, and they're to be married in just a matter of hours. And then the plan is to have Diane get on a ship the next morning and go to San Diego and wait for Bobby, which will join her at a later date, and they'll live happily ever after, or so they thought. After this conversation, we see them gather up their things, and they start to head up the beach to Bobby's car here, and I can actually match this up. We'll drop down here. So in this frame right here, Bobby's car is parked right in this area here. And then they get in the car. We get a tight shot of the license plate. We see that it's 1941. And then we hear some music and some narration from a DJ on the radio. And we realize that this is the evening before the attack on Pearl Harbor. And then they pull onto the road right here and head down that way. This is Tinker Road. And then this night scene transitions to a present day daytime scene, and we see Magnum on Tinker Road driving in about right here, and then he pulls off the road basically at that exact same spot that Bobby was parked at right here. Take a look at that. And this is where we get our title screen. And then if you look behind Tom, this open area here is kind of this area right here. And then the mountains that you're seeing right there are these mountains here. Kind of match that up a little bit. And then Tom, he heads down towards the ocean, and he makes his way over to that jetty from the earlier scene. And we'll jump back up here. And again, there really aren't any good street view locations in this area. But this individual, this is present day Bobby, or Robert Kane, and in this frame, he's standing just about right there. And Tom, he makes his way over to Mr. Kane, he introduces himself, and we learn that Robert Kane, he's been recently nominated to the Supreme Court, but he needs to hire Magnum to find someone who went missing 40 years ago. And if Magnum can't find her within 24 hours, he's going to have to decline the nomination. He explains He explains to Magnum that her name was Diane, and she worked a club on Hotel Street, the Wiki Wiki Club. And Magnum, he asks, was she a hooker? And Mr. Kane, he pauses for a sec and he says, yes, but she was also my wife. And then he gets up and actually walks out onto this jetty, walks out towards the end of it. And he tells Magnum that shortly after his Supreme Court nomination, he received this kind of mysterious telegram. And it said, "Congratulations, Bobby," from Diane. And he just doesn't dare accept this nomination, until he can meet with her and find out what the true motive, find out what the motive of this telegram was. And he hands Magnum a photo of Diane from 40 years ago. And from there, it immediately cuts to the King Kamehameha Club. And Moki, he's looking at that same picture of Diane, and he's asking Magnum about her. And then we see Rick come by, and he's trying to get some non-members out of the club, and Magnum assists him in doing so. And then Rick comes over to the bar. Again, they were just inside this area right here. Rick, he sits down next to Magnum. Magnum says, "I need your help finding a girl that worked on Hotel Street at the Wiki Wiki Club." And Rick says, "Wiki Wiki Club? I've never heard of it." And then Magnum informs him that it was 40 years ago. Next, we get a shot of some surfers, and this was shot right here at the Puaena Point Beach Park. And then we also see someone standing on the beach down at the park. Now Rick, he's figured out who the bartender was that worked at the Wiki Wiki Club 40 years prior. A gentleman named Maku. And Tom's on his way up to try and meet with him. But in this frame here, this is Maku's granddaughter, Kiki, and she would have been standing about right there. And Tom, he makes his way up to her, says he's looking for Maku, and she says, "Maku, he's the crazy old man out in the ocean swimming towards us." And I can match this up. So in this frame, Maku, he would have been about right in here. And he makes his way up the beach. And something else that I noticed that I found fascinating was I'm fairly certain that rock right there is that rock, just buried under the sand quite a bit more 40 years ago. So in this frame, Maku, he would have been standing about right there. And he makes his way up the beach to Tom and Kiki. Tom introduces himself, and Maku sends her off to get some beer. I'm curious if this structure, if that was just something that was there 40 years ago, or was this something that they built for the episode? I'm not sure. If anyone has any idea, please comment. It would have been about right there. But Tom, he gives him the photo of Diane. Diane Westmore asks if he knew her while he worked at the club. And he looks at the photo, and you can tell that he does recognize her, but he doesn't want to say anything. And then he says, "Sorry, I don't remember her." And then Tom's like, "Hey, you sure? You worked there the same time she did?" And then Kiki comes back, and Maku, he asks Tom to drive her to work. And in the meantime, he'll make some phone calls and ask around and see if anyone knows this Diane Westmore. And they take off, and Maku, he watches them walk away, and you can tell he's he's concerned as to why Tom is looking for Diane. From there, we get this shot. We can hear a telephone ringing in the background, and we see this individual making his way up to a garage, and he answers the phone, has a quick conversation, and then hangs up. And then we see this woman, this is Diane Polly, come out of the house here at the Walker estate, and she's standing about right there in that shot. She makes her way over to the driver, and he says, I just got a phone call from Maku, and that he was just visited by somebody looking for Diane Westmore. And that leaves her with a concerned look on her face. Next, we see Tom back at the estate in the tidal pool, out there swimming laps, trying to clear his head. In this frame, he would have been right in here, swimming towards the little turtle pen, and he swims up to it. And this is the corner of it, right here. Zeus, in this frame, Zeus was sitting about right there. And Magnum, he's a little confused as to why Zeus is there with his towel. And then he heads over to the beach to find Apollo right over here with his flip-flops. And he collects those. And he looks up at the guest house, and he sees Higgins standing right there with a big old smile on his face, clearly up to something. Magnum makes his way up there to the lanai, and he instantly knows that this is not normal behavior for Higgins. And then they make their way into the guest house, which takes us to the Hawaii Film Studio. They make their way inside, and Higgins, he goes straight for the fridge, and he gets Magnum a beer. And we find out that Higgins, he needs an extra player for his bridge tournament the following day. And he asks Magnum if he's the T Magnum that played on the American bridge team in '72. And Magnum, he plays it beautifully. He doesn't admit to being that T Magnum, nor does he deny being that T Magnum. However, he tells Higgins that he'd love to play in the tournament, but he's just too busy with this investigation. And Higgins, he offers to assist with the investigation any way he can. And he departs the guest house to go pull some clippings and warm up the Ferrari. Next, we see Tom parked outside of the Hawaiian Regent Hotel. And today, this is it's the Waikiki Beach Marriott. And he's waiting for Mr. Kane to come out. He's going to take him for a little drive. And let me drop down and match this up. So yeah, the Hawaiian Regent sign used to be right there. And Tom, yeah, he's just he's right there in this frame. But we see Mr. Kane come out of the lobby to the pickup and drop-off area, standing right in here somewhere. And then we see Tom. He backs out of that stall and shoots across the street and enters this area right here. Pulls up to Mr. Kane, and he gets in. And I thought this was interesting. You can still match up the roof inside of this area here. See, all this is exactly the same. But then they pull out over here onto Ohua Avenue. Right there. And they start to drive to Kalakaua Avenue, which is here. Matched up here, we see them continue down the avenue, and as they're driving, Tom he continues to ask questions about Diane and the Wiki Wiki Club, and things just aren't adding up. And Tom he knows he's not being given the whole story here. And from there, they wind up at this location, and we will go there now. And this was all the way up in Wahiwa, and this was filmed on North Kane Street. And we'll drop down there and match this up. So this perspective is looking straight out this way. Those are the lights right there. This row of buildings here, this is really the only one that's still completely intact. You got a big gap here, which is probably about right there. And then only about half, the lower portion of this one still exists. But the camera continues to pan that way until we see Magnum round the corner here and pulls up to about right here and parks. And then again, looking directly across, about at that angle there. And Magnum tells Mr. Kane that he knows he's not getting the whole story, and that if he wants him to find Diane, he has to know everything. And he tells Magnum that there's nothing that I can tell you. There's nothing more that I can tell you that will help you find Diane. And he asks Magnum to take him back to his hotel. And then they start to pull away from the curb right here. And then we'll see them turn into this little alleyway right here by that fire hydrant. So yeah, they're right there. And then they pull behind the buildings. Now this street, it's changed quite a bit. Let's see, we'll pop up here and take a look. So this is the alleyway that they turned down right here. And then back when this was filmed, from about here, these buildings weren't built out this far, and there was an alleyway, a roadway back along here. But they pulled back here, and then they turned onto the road here, and we'll take a look at that. And as they're making their way along the road here, this way, Robert, he looks back at the building, and he has a flashback to the night that he and Diane eloped. And then in the flashback, we see him round that same corner back here in his car to pick up Diane. Parks, and he gets out. She starts to sneak out of her room and makes her way down to him. And as they're doing so, the house madam, Jessie, she comes out and tells Robert that Diane still has 2 years left on her contract with the club, and that she's not going anywhere. And then we see Dutch, the house bouncer. He starts to come down, Robert tells Diane to get back in the car, and he makes his way over to Dutch. And then Dutch pulls out a knife. And this guy up on the balcony, he wants it to be a fair fight, so he throws a knife down to Robert, or Bobby. And Bobby picks it up, and the knife fight begins. And then Bobby trips over a garbage can or something, and then Dutch falls on top of him, and he's stabbed in the gut. And then Bobby gets up, and he runs back to Diane. They jump back in his car, and they get out of there. And then Jessie here, you see her looking over at him and screaming, "You've killed him, you've killed him." And then they split. But the fight scene, I believe, took place right here. It's a parking lot today. And then they would have driven down this road here, out onto this road. Mr. Kane, he snaps out of it back to present day. And then they also take that same route out of there. Next, we get this exterior establishing shot of the King Kamehameha Club. However, this is not the Elks Lodge. This is the Halekulani Resort, and it is right there today. This resort's it's been redeveloped, and it's this building. You almost can't even see it anymore. It's just surrounded by new portions of the hotel. And I was curious how they got this shot, and it had to have been taken from this hotel right here, just shooting down, like that onto the building. But from here we go to the interior of the King Kamehameha Club over at the Elks Lodge, and we see Magnum and Rick just right inside the building right there. And Magnum's telling Rick that none of this makes sense. He says, I know Kane's lying to me, I know Maku's lying to me, I know this tickler is gonna lie to me. Rick, he's also found the piano player that played at the Wiki Wiki Club 40 years ago, and he says, "Yeah, I know he's gonna lie to me as well." As they're having this conversation, Higgins he sees them and starts to make his way over there. Rick sees Higgins coming and tells Magnum to get out of there because he's not wearing a jacket. Higgins, he comes up and he starts to inquire about Magnum's investigation, asks if there's anything else he can do to help, because he wants Magnum, to be available for the bridge tournament the next day. And Magnum, he turns and says, "It's not going so good, but I'll try to be there." And then Higgins, he turns and leaves. And then Magnum, he gets up and he heads to our next location, which will be our first unidentified filming location for this episode. They show us this exterior establishing shot of this hotel right here, and this is the Waikiki Shore by Outrigger Hotel. And then they cut to the interior of the hotel, and I just cannot figure out what hotel this was. I've looked at dozens of photos from inside of the Waikiki Beach Marriott, the Waikiki Shore by Outrigger Hotel, and I just cannot match anything up. So I don't think that this was filmed in either of those hotels. So if anyone recognizes this next scene, the hotel in this next scene, please comment. I'd love to know where they filmed this. But Tom, he makes his way over into the piano lounge, and again, yeah, somebody's got to recognize this this little lounge area here, and makes his way up to Tickler, the piano player that played back at the Wiki Wiki Club in '41, and Tom heads up there and verifies that he's the Tickler that played at the club, and then he shows him a picture of Diane, asks if he remembers her. And he looks at it for a minute and says, "Sure, I remember Diane. I also remember when she died." Tom's like, "Died? Are you sure?" And he says, "Yeah, about as sure as an old man can get." And then Tom, he tips him and he takes off. And then we see Diane Polly from earlier in the lounge. She watches Magnum as he leaves. And then she makes her way over to Tickler and gives him a nice big tip and thanks him for telling a white lie for her. And then she looks back over at Magnum and she's trying to figure out, who he is and why he's trying to find her. Next, we see Tom leaving the hotel after meeting with Tickler. He's walking out to the Ferrari here, and in this frame, the Ferrari is parked right here on Ahua Avenue. But before I drop down there, I do think it's possible that the piano lounge scene was filmed in one of these two Marriott properties, but I just have not been able to verify it. But this scene here, I can verify, and we'll do that now. Turn and match this up. Something like that. This garment factory today is a Burger King, and this building here is an ABC store. And then we see Tom. He gets in the Ferrari, and he drives down Ahua to Kalakaua Avenue. And get a shot of him here on Kalakaua, and we'll pop back up here in this frame. Tom is about right here, making his way down the avenue to go pick up Kiki. However, he doesn't realize that he's got this black limousine tailing him. And then we see him pulling up to the curb to pick up Kiki. We'll go down there, match this up. In this frame here, Ferrari is approximately there, and he continues up to the curb to her, and this frame is right here. In fact, I think it's very, very possible that palm tree right there is that palm tree, the same one. It's definitely an oldie. These palm trees, they can live for 100 years, and it definitely looks like it could be that same tree. But Kiki, she gets in the Ferrari, and then they pull away from the curb, and the black limousine continues to follow them, and then they turn up Kalakaua here. You see the split in the road right here, and that splits right there in this frame. The limousine is about right there, and from here we go to this location, the Diamond Head Crater. And in this scene, we see Tom and Kiki in the Ferrari driving along this road right here. And the way you can tell is in this frame, you can see one of these bunkers on the side of Diamond Head. And in fact, I'm fairly certain that this bunker is that one right there. And they continue down the road here in the scene, and Tom, he gives Kiki that old photo of Diane Westmore, and he asks her to take another look at it and try and picture her, 40 years older, what this woman would look like. And she starts to do that. And again, they continue along the road here, and then we see that black limousine pull up to the side of them, and Kiki spots somebody sticking a gun out of the side of the limousine, and she ducks. Tom ducks, and they fire, and Tom loses control of the Ferrari and goes into the jungle somewhere in here. And then we see that limousine speed away from the scene. Now this, initially, I thought, you see how there's a fork in the road here leading out. I thought it was right here. However, if you look at it closely, there's a bridge right here that they cross over, and there's nothing like that in this area. So this scene here where the limousine is speeding away, is racing away, yeah, I'm not sure where this is at. After that, we get this scene. It was a night shoot, and we see Tom and Kiki are still stranded on the side of the road. And this location, yeah, I don't know where it's at. My guess is it could possibly be in that same area on the side of Diamond Head. But yeah, I don't know. There's a giant tree there, and Tom's down in, looks like a little culvert there. But yeah, just not enough to go on to identify this. Again, if somebody is familiar with where this is, please comment. But TC, he's arrived to try and assist them, and he jumps down there and takes a look and tells Tom that he's got a busted transmission. And then while they're down there, Kiki, she continues to look at that photo, and she tells Tom that I've been looking at the photo and I think I know who this is. However, her name is not Diane Westmore, it's Diane Polly. Next, we get this scene back at Diane's home. Her housekeeper comes in and says there's a Mr. Magnum here to see you. She says he was a friend of the governor's, and she says send him in. And he comes in, and she instantly recognizes him from the piano lounge. And just to show you, this was in fact filmed inside of the Walker estate. There aren't many photos of the interior of the estate, but I did manage to find one, and it just happens to match this scene perfectly, match up to this scene. And you see this cabinetry here along the wall, and I don't know when this photo was taken. It looks like probably in the 20s or 30s. But yeah, perfectly matches this frame here. Thought that was pretty neat. But we learn after her brief marriage with Bobby, at some point she was married to the governor, Michael Polly, who is now deceased. And she asks Magnum, how did you know the governor? And Tom says, I didn't know the governor personally. I knew your first husband, Bobby. And she says, you know Bobby? And Magnum says, yeah, he hired me to find you. And she says, Bobby's been dead for 40 years. He died on the USS Arizona during the attack on Pearl Harbor. From there, we get just a really brief shot of the Honolulu harbor. And then we see Tom and Mr. Kane on the interstate highway. And I don't know exactly where it is, but I'm certain that this is the Interstate Highway 1. And Rick, he's driving them to the airport. Mr. Kane, he's paid Magnum for his services, and he's gonna head back home. And then we get a couple driving scenes at some different locations. We get this one here, which was on North Nimitz Highway. And I'll drop down and match this up. So you see them driving down this road here a bit, and then if you look right here, you can see this building and the two signs. And building is still there today with the two signs. However, the sign frames are still there, but the actual signage is no longer in there. And then we get a shot of them on this portion of the road here. Drop down, and you can make out these two structures here. This is the one that really stands out. Some kind of looks like it was some kind of storage facility right there, and that building is right there. You can really notice this upper portion of the roof right there. Mr. Kane, he sees that they missed the airport exit, and he yells out to Rick. And Tom says, Diane's not at the airport, and that's who you hired me to find. And Mr. Kane says, well, where is she? And then it immediately cuts to this establishing shot at the Arizona Memorial. And then we see inside of the memorial. And we'll drop in and match this up. And yeah, that matches almost perfectly. We get a closer look at the memorial wall here. Something like that. And then we see Tom and Mr. Kane looking at a model of the Arizona. While Mr. Kane's doing that, he kind of starts to flash back to the day of the attack, and we get this footage, which they reused. This was footage from the movie Tora. Pretty amazing footage. And then suddenly we hear someone calling out for Bobby, and he hears it. He looks over and looks like he's seen a ghost. And then Diane, she makes her way up to him, and they hug. They try to portray this reunion as taking place in this portion of the Arizona Memorial. However, this scene, it was not filmed in here. They shot this over at the Pearl Harbor Memorial over here. And we'll drop down there and show you exactly where this scene was shot. Have to go back in time to do it. This entire Pearl Harbor National Memorial has been redeveloped over the years and is quite a bit different than the day they shot this scene. But if we go back to, let's see, 2005 here, this entire scene was filmed inside of this part of the memorial here. Robert and Diane, they're right inside here. And then we see Tom watching their reunion take place. And in this frame, Tom, he's standing directly underneath this awning right here. And if you look behind him, you can see one of the Arizona's anchors, the actual anchor from the USS Arizona. And you can just make it out right there. So this wall behind Tom is this wall here. And again, the anchor is right there. I was able to find one photo of this. And right here, I think this is circa 2004 or 2005. Looks like there used to be water in this little area here that they filled in with dirt at some point. Who knows? And then, Robert, he asks Diane, what happened? Where did you go? And she says, I never left Oahu. She says, I wasn't going to leave you, to face the police alone. So I got off the ship before it sailed, and then just a couple hours after that, the attack occurred. And then Robert, he says, I went up into the sugarcane fields to watch you set sail, and the Japanese attacked. And then a few days later, I boarded a cargo ship, went back to the mainland to search for you. And when I couldn't find you, I decided to change my name. His real name was Robert Wicks. And then he joined the Army, and the rest is history. And Magnum, he's a little annoyed. He's like, Mr. Kane, you didn't tell me any of this. You didn't tell me that your real name is Robert Wicks. You didn't tell me about this fight that occurred. And he says, come to think of it, I've never even seen this mysterious telegram that you told me about. And Mr. Kane, he hands Magnum the telegram. And Diane's like, I didn't send this. I didn't even know Bobby was alive. And Mr. Kane, he also states that morning he'd received a ransom note, and they wanted $50,000, or else they were going to kind of, tell the world who he really is and about the killing of Dutch. And then we see Robert walk over to the edge here, pretend he's walking over to the edge, and he looks down at the Arizona. As Robert's looking down at the Arizona here, he says, "God, I should be down there with my shipmates. Had I not killed Dutch, I would be down there." And then Diane, she says, Dutch didn't die. She says, he came to me many, many years ago, down on his luck, and he had heard that I'd helped a lot of people from the old days. And then Magnum, he says, it sounds like you know where Dutch is today. And she's like, yeah, he's my limousine driver. And Magnum starts to realize what's going on here. From there, we see Rick at this location. We'll pop over there. It's also back over at the Pearl Harbor National Memorial. And let's see, let's go back to 2004, 2005. In this scene, Rick is parked like right in here. And then he makes his way over to Diane's limo driver, starts to engage in a little small talk with him. And then during the small talk here, he mentions that he's driving his buddy and some judge around, which gets Dutch's attention. Then Rick sees them coming back in on the boat towards the memorial here. And this is right here in this frame. Oh, in this frame, boat's about right there. And it's going to dock right there. Tom, he wants off that boat as fast as possible. And then he jumps off right there. And he runs over to about right here, looks out into the parking lot, and then he yells at Rick out here to stop Dutch. And boy, that'd be a hope he's got a good set of lungs, because that's quite. Let's see here, how far is that? It's 513 feet away, but well, I guess anything's possible. And then Tom, he runs out towards the parking lot. Dutch, he's like, I am out of here. And then we see Tom. Try and match this up a little bit. In this frame, you can see this is that wall where the anchor's just on the other side of it, and it's right there. So Tom, there's a little pathway right through here that's kind of hidden. But Tom, he runs out on that pathway right here towards Rick, and Rick turns and he sees Dutch taking off, and he tries to stop him. Dutch takes off probably right there. You see them both pull out of the parking lot and then turn back in here. They jump in their limo. They take that route. And then from there, we cut to this location, which is Waikimilo Road, right here. And at the end of the road is where this fictional Pearl Harbor entry gate was located, approximately right here. And we see the limos come racing in on Waikimilo, which, has changed, obviously. And then they break through the gate, and this entire area is under a massive renovation. None of the things you're going to see in these next frames even exist anymore. This building here, everything over here has been just leveled and is being rebuilt. And then out here on Pier 40, both of these buildings that we're going to see are now gone. However, if we go back in time to 2006, everything is still here, thankfully, or else this would have been really hard to figure out. But they pull through the gate, and this is Waikimilo. They come down, they turn, break through the gate, and then you see them do kind of a 180, come back this way, and they're driving around and through some shipping containers, very much like these ones that are right here. And then they turn and they're heading back towards this building here, which is that building. It is berth 39C. And thankfully there is one and only one street view still in this area, and we can see berth 39C right there, and then we get a little bit better closer shot of it right here. And then from there they turn. Let's go back to 2006. So 39C right there. That's what you're seeing, that side of the building right there. And then they turn and they start to head down along Pier 40A. And we'll take a look at that now. And in this frame, they're right here. They make their way all the way down to the end of the pier, make this big swinging wide turn back to the other side of the building there. Look at that. And then we see them on the other side, right along here. Dutch there, and Tom and Rick right behind him. Dutch has a forklift about right there that's blocking his path, and he has to stop. They exit the vehicles. MP's in the front, in the back, and then Rick, he says, "Do you think they'll make us re-up?" But yeah, in this frame, they are about right there. Next, we see Higgins back at the estate, right down here in the courtyard, ready to start his bridge game. And he looks a little nervous. He doesn't know if Magnum's going to show up or not. And then suddenly we start to hear the lads growl, and Tom comes walking through the gate right here over to the card table. And Higgins, he's elated that Magnum showed. They sit down and start to get ready to play. And then Tom says, "Higgins, I've got a confession to make. I don't know how to play bridge." And then Higgins just looks stunned, just stares at him for a minute, and then he just slowly starts to stand up like he's gonna kill Magnum. And that is a wrap on Lest We Forget. The next episode that I cover in this filming location series will be The Curse of the King Kamehameha Club. Hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it. If you did, please hit that like and subscribe button. And lastly, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.